disjointed, meaning an advancednet.prv is a private domain name used only internally in your private business, then you have an external presence or a public presence, and for us it's ncstech.org. So the subdomain that I have set up for myself is aaron.ncstech.org, but my internal private domain is advancednet.prv. So to set your Exchange server up so it will accept for email for that domain, and then we will also then configure mailboxes. I currently have 2 users that have email set up that I just tested and everything works, and I have 2 new users that I just created, Sue and Tim, that will need emails. So let's take a look at the Exchange Management Console so we can configure the settings needed in order to have a disjointed namespace and accept email for our public domain. Okay, in here it shows that I'm still under a trial license, so we hit OK on this. And if we open up our organization configuration, we have a couple things that we want to take a look at. Our mailbox shows the actual database. I actually created 2 of them, but you should probably have the default one, mail database, and then a number. Make sure it is mounted. Sometimes it does not mount. I've come across those problems. Client access, we're going to leave that default. The hub transport is where we need to identify the domains that we're going to accept email from. So if we click on the Accepted Domains tab, you can see that I have my advancednet.prv in there, and I also added my aaron.ncstech.org. This is my public one. So how do I add ones? I just right click on this and select New Accepted Domain. And I type in the name, whatever I want to call this. So test, and then it's going to be test.ncstech.org. And we are the authoritative domain for this. And hit New and Finish. So it will show up as an accepted domain. Once you have that set up, then you go into email address policies. And you notice that I created one for aaron.ncstech.org. You should already have a default policy. The default policy you cannot change, but what you can do is create a new default policy or a new email address policy. And this is so any new user that you create will have the new domain name that is publicly visible. So what you're going to do is right click and we're going to create a new address policy on the hub transport for your organization. And we'll name this test.ncstech.org for this example. And we're going to hit next. And next. And we're going to type in our email address policy. So here's where you can choose, no matter if your username is first initial last name or your first name, last name, whatever your login is, you can set this to be your email address by using the alias. The alias comes from the actual username in your domain. Otherwise, you can choose some default settings that are fairly popular. First name dot last name, which a lot of organizations like to use to keep out duplicates. Or you can do first name, initial, last name, or first name, last initial, and so forth. So you can select the options you want. This one is fairly popular and is used around. And then you want to select the acceptable domain for the addresses, and we're going to use the test.ncstech.org. I previously did choose Aaron. Hit OK, and OK on this, and this is what it looks like. Their first name dot last name. Hit next, and then it will apply this new policy. Once I hit next and hit new, it will create it. So I'm not going to do this, and this is the one that it did create for me when I did this prior. I'm going to go under accepted, and I'm going to get rid of my test. I don't want to use that. Okay, so now that we have created our acceptable domains and email address policy, now I can take a look at my server configuration. If you note, your server has an Exchange certificate. The certificate is used because you're going to be accessing your email through Outlook Web Access using HTTPS, which is encrypted using SSL certificates. In order to do this, you need a certificate to encrypt the message from the client to the server. So the default one that comes in here is self-signed. If you want to imply this for a company organization and not have a certificate warning on all the clients, you're going to need to purchase for about $100 a year a certificate to install into your Exchange certificates to use instead of the self-signed one. And that way the clients will not get that error message any longer. Underneath client access, under server configuration, client access, we see that the Outlook Web Access default website, if we open that up, we can see that the internal access is using my internal private domain name with HTTPS. And externally, this is what your users would type in. So mine is actually mail.aaron.ncstech.org/OWA. You have to put that /OWA in. So this is what the user would type, or click a link that would take them to this on an external or a public website if they wanted to log into your email server and check their Exchange email. Authentication I'll leave default. If you leave the default login, I'll come back to this in a second after I show you this. They have to type in their domain name / the username. But you can change this by just identifying the username and identify the domain that they're going to log into. We'll change that in a second after you see those settings. So again, just general, make sure this is set up to the actual public address that they'll be typing in outside of your firewall if they were like at Starbucks. Okay. And then we come down here to the recipient configuration. And what we do want to do is create mailboxes. So I already have a couple of mailboxes for those two users that already existed. I'm going to create, for the rest of the users, I'm going to create a new mailbox. So if you identify the recipient scope, meaning where are you going to look in your domain? My domain is advancednet.prv, but I've chosen, instead of looking in the entire forest, to look in that specific OU called site1/users. So that way it'll only look in that OU for new users that we're going to be adding. Okay, so to create a new mailbox, we right click on mailbox and select new mailbox. And we're going to create a new user mailbox. You can create one for rooms if they want to rent out a room or use a room based on like conference room. Equipment mailbox for renting or loaning out projectors and so forth. And then a linked mailbox is a name for a mailbox that's accessed by a user in a separate but trusted forest. So another forest that has another domain if you had like a sub company or sister company. So new user mailbox, and we're gonna use existing users. So here are my two users, Sue and Tim. I'm going to hold the shift key down to select all of them. Hit OK. And then hit next. And it's going to use, the alias is going to be generated based on my default mailbox policy that we set when I first explained Exchange Management Console. And hit next. And they're done. You can take a look at them. They are finished. So now I have my two users in there, and you can see the email address. So the email address is now using the disjointed public namespace, so sue.test@aaron.ncstech.org. Okay, well, I also installed, this is Exchange 2010, and I installed all the updates as of November 2010. No, we're in 2011 actually, in November 2011. And there is a roll-up that actually installs that messes up your Outlook Web Access. You get a blank page. So in order to fix that, you have to run the Exchange Management Console, or the management shell. And you do that by, on your Exchange server, selecting Start, Microsoft Exchange Server, and then choose Exchange Management Shell. When you're inside the Exchange Management Shell, you're at the prompt in Windows System 32. You're going to change directory / and then type in PRO and hit the tab key, and it will auto-complete this. So we're going to keep hitting the tab key to auto-complete. Program files, Microsoft, exchange v14 bin. Oh, I didn't like bin. There we go. All right. You have to hit the tab key again. So in that folder, program files, Microsoft Exchange, server, v14 bin, you're going to type update cas.ps1. So just type upd and hit the tab key, and it will automatically complete it, identifying this current directory. We're going to run this script. Hit enter on this script, and it'll run through and fix the Outlook Web Access problems. And now we should be able to get access to our Outlook Web Access. I'm going to type exit. Now let's give it a try. So I'm going to go to my workstation. Got my workstation here. And I am going to log off. Log in as tim.test. While I'm logging into a workstation that's in my domain, I'm also going to log in to the web access. Whoa, something goofy going on here. So this is accessing my HTTPS, my email server from public, and I'm on a computer that is on the internet. I already have it open somewhere else. Where do I have it open? There it is. Alright, let me sign out. There we go. So I'm going to log in as su.test. And notice it says you have to type the domain in, so advancednet/su.test. My password. And central time zone. Hit OK. So now I'm logged in as Sue. So I'm going to send a new email to Tim. And if I hit the 2, it should allow me to select Tim. Oh. Check name. There we go. Subject. Testing Tim's email. Test 1 2 3. And we'll send. So Sue just sent Tim an email. So now I'm going to go to Tim's email. So I'm going to minimize this. So here we're on Tim's workstation. Tim is logged in. Here's Tim Test. And I'm going to open up Microsoft Office, Outlook. And I'm going to hit next. And do you want to configure an email account? Yes. And it automatically grabs my email address out of the Active Directory properties or attribute for email address, tim.test@aaron.ncstech.org. Next. And it should automatically see the Exchange server. Here is the certificate warning, so you get it on the clients as well. And finish. And there's this Tim Test. And yes, I accept it, and don't make any changes now. Hit OK. And there's the email I got from Sue. So if I take a look at my email here for Sue, I'm going to sign out. I'm going to go back into Tim's email, and I'm going to reply back to Sue saying, hey there, thanks for the email, Tim, and hit send. Okay, so remember that domain name that we had to type in? I'm going to delete this from Tim. Well, let's go back to our Exchange server and let's set it up so our users don't have to type in our domain name. So I'm back on the Exchange server, taking a look at the server configuration under Hub Transport. That's right, client access is where I want. The OWA default website. If you click on this and check on authentication, you can identify username only. So we need to identify the domain name that they're going to be logging in as. And by default, it'll choose the domain name that we have, advancednet.prv. So hit OK. So this means I need to restart my Internet Information Services. So to do this, I run the command IIS reset/noforce. So I go up to command line, IIS reset no force. Alright, it says it didn't respond in a timely fashion, so I'm going to go and just make sure that IIS did start. And we're going to start that up. Why will it not start? Well, now my web access won't start. Yeah, it's giving me an error message here. I might just have to restart the whole server if this doesn't work. Attempting start. There, successfully restarted. Okay. So now that we have restarted our services for IIS, now we should be able to go to Outlook Web Access. Oops, I want to go here, and now I should be able to log in as su.test. Notice it doesn't say I need to type in a domain name. And now I'm logged in. Here's, hey there, thanks for the email, the response. So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something and got your email working.